To me, this is not just another nation. It is not just one of the family of nations. This is a nation with a great mission to perform for the benefit of liberty-loving people everywhere.
That we shall be as a city upon a hill.
These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of his country.
You've come to fight as three men. Three men you are. What will you do without freedom?
Proclaim liberty throughout all the land.
In one voice, we will not go quietly into the night. We will not vanish without a fight.
You gotta fight for your right.
Can you dig it?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another edition of Real News in this morning time, 9:01 in the morning on August 28th. I do that, and I was actually thinking about that as I did this yesterday. I say the time and the date and everything, and then I think, well, this isn't like a live radio broadcast where people would need to know the time. A lot of these folks are watching back later on, so let me say it this way. Wherever you are, whatever time you so happen to be watching this, hey, welcome to the show. Welcome to the game. Welcome to the community. We absolutely love having you. Look, man, I'm all Real News decked out today. I found the Real News hat back there in the corner somewhere. If y'all don't know, the reason why I went with this screen behind me, without the green screen, you can see my hands are all webby right now. The reason for this, because this room that I'm sitting in is not looking great right now, and my wife would not have it to me to show y'all this stuff. There's boxes everywhere. We just got finished moving to a place, you know what I mean? This is my little room right now. So it is what it is. But look, I found the Real News hat in a box. I got the Real News mug going. It's Real News related stuff. Real News, real friends, real community. If you're brand new, what we do here at Real News, we have a dialogue, right? We have conversations. This is a community where we can have dialogue and calm, cordial debate and disagreement, so that when we do have disagreements, it's disagreements amongst friends and neighbors, not amongst enemies. My name is Mr. Henry, is what they call me here. David Sean Thompson back with us again this morning. Still feeling slightly under the weather, so he's going to be sort of just rolling producers in the background, man. But just to let him know you're still alive, doing all right, Shine. How you doing, bud? Everything good out East Tennessee way?
I'm going to make it.
Yeah.
I'm going to make it. I got coffee, I got orange juice, and Tums. It's going to be all right.
That's what I'm talking about. Coffee, orange juice. That sounds like I'm not gonna lie, that sounds like an awful combination.
Well, not at the same time, Grant. I have it based on need, you know.
Put them together. Let me just do a little experiment.
No, let's not do that. That sounds great.
Let's not do that. Oh, man. Hey, how's everybody doing this morning? Let's do Greatest Audience in the Nation Appreciation segment here. Now, what goes on during the Greatest Audience in the Nation Appreciation segment? If you are new to the community, to the crowd, whatever else, let us know how you're doing, what you're struggling with, what you're reading, what you're into right now, what philosophy you're looking into. I don't know. Let us know who you are, what you're about. Yeah, I don't know if you want to bring up a topic of conversation. It is Friday, so let me go ahead and open up the Google Voice phone lines as well, just in case y'all want to call. No, Google, I didn't tell. My phone went off. Google Voice is open right now. That number 615-807-0619. Shine, I'll throw that graphic up here. 615-807-0619. At any point during the show, if you want to call in and just, I don't care. It's Friday. It's open line Friday. I'm the first person to ever say that. Call in, bring up a topic. Let us know what you want to talk about. Everything's fair game. All right, we'll switch topic entirely on a dime if you want to. That's totally fine. Plus, today is a little bit sparse with news anyways. It's just a bunch of RNC related stuff, but we got some good stuff we're going to go through for sure. Greatest Audience of the Nation Appreciation segment, though. The other thing we do here is just giving ideas to where you're at, where you're coming from. What are you looking into right now? And what do you need help with? Prayer concerns? Anything like that. Update for a prayer concern, okay? Our buddy Phil Smith. He's a guy that's from New Zealand. He helped out tremendously during this Nashville Taxpayer Protection Act. And y'all saw that I put a prayer request out on the Facebook page saying that our buddy Phil was going to have colon cancer surgery. Now, this is about a week or 2 weeks back now. Maybe it was even longer, maybe 3 weeks back. Anyways, he says, I've been keeping up with him, and he heard some reports back. Everything is looking good. All tumors removed. And they're thinking now they won't even have to follow up with any form of chemo. So it's everything great news on that front. I just wanted to bring you all that as a sort of a aspect of praise. Let's get into the news right now. Jonathan's posting stuff on Facebook already saying, remember those suicide mixes? Yeah, I do remember that. I believe he's talking about, when you were a kid, you'd go down the line. Oh, because Shine, I was talking about, Shine wants to do
See, I never did that. I thought all those kids were weird for doing that. Like, I'd do like maybe 3 flavors max, but whenever I did the suicide, it just tasted like all the candy got dumped in a bag and then melted into one piece, and it just didn't taste good. I liked mixing like Sprite with like different other flavored sodas, but that's about as far as I'd go.
I do think the suicide mix was more one of those things you just felt cool saying, give me a suicide. And no one ever really liked drinking it. Like, it was not a good tasting mixture, that's for sure. But I think Jonathan's wanting you to make a suicide mix with the orange juice, the coffee, and the Tums. See how that goes. Eric says in Facebook, he goes by Brandon by his friends, by the way. But Eric says in Facebook, what's up? Good morning, Nashville. Nice hat. That's right. The Real News hat. We'll throw some of this swag out here. But realnewsradio.live, realnewsradio.live is where you can find some stuff. And then Jonathan links to HR 466. What is this? Amateur Radio Parody Act of 2019. All right, man. Jonathan, fill me in on why you're putting this up in the show notes. It's interesting. This bill prohibits private rules such as those imposed by a community association that prevent an amateur radio operator from installing an outdoor antenna. Okay.
Dude, right. Jonathan, you have no idea. Here, I'm going to even put my camera up for this. You have no idea how many times we've almost bought a radio transmitter and stuck it on top of like a high place in the Knoxville area to cover like a mile or two, like at least downtown Knoxville and surrounding neighborhoods. We've been so close. It's not that expensive. It's not as expensive as you'd think. But I don't know. There are other people in town who do that. And I'm sure there's people in Nashville who do that too. It's just like, I feel like the internet is a better place than pirate radio to do a radio show.
Yeah.
For now.
Pirate radio is still fun though.
It is fun.
Yeah. Hey, let's get into the news here. It is 9:07. We got some stuff we got to cover. Quick local update. And I don't even want to dive into this. You don't even have to pull the headline up, Sean, if you do. Actually, you know what? Whatever. Just pull the headline up. It's fun just for people to see. That first headline there from the Tennessee Star. Somebody else posted this on the Real News page. I want to say it was Shine or Richard. I'm not sure who posted this, but it came from a Carnes Republican page. Carnes, this area out in East Tennessee way, right? It came from a Carnes Republican page posting from the Tennessee Star that Mayor Cooper has now called the Nashville Taxpayer Protection Act a poison pill. So, I mean, look, I just want to pause real quick, give y'all some praise one more time. Y'all are making impacts out here, right? You're causing a stir. You're giving Metro a little bit of a headache to deal with. You got Mayor Cooper out here now having to respond to media saying it's a poison pill. It's gonna destroy the entirety of government. We won't have a government left if this thing.
You know, Grant, when I saw that, I'm like, I don't think he knows what poison pill means, because poison pill means it's gonna pass. Like, poison pill is when you have something that everyone wants in a bill, and then like a small thing that nobody would want. So the whole point is it's a pill. You're going to take it because you need it. It's medicine. But there's something in it that might be poisonous. And I'm assuming he's talking about the stuff beyond the property tax, like the land
that's
stuff.
Exactly what he's talking about.
He's talking about the land stuff. And because they love buying land for entertainment purposes in Nashville. They just think it's the funnest thing in the world. But like, what he is saying by poison pill is that it's going to pass. And I don't think he knows that. Someone should have given him... Who fills these people in? This is what I want to know. Like,
I don't know.
Sometimes I wonder, like, me and you could make like so much more money if we just told people in leadership what not to say. We could make so much money doing that. Just run everything by us. We know context.
Yeah, it's what not to say. You're exactly. We don't even have to tell them what to say. Just here's a list of things not to say, and you should be totally fine. And you're right. Ultimately, Mayor Cooper focuses quite a bit on the other things outside of the property tax increase, right? He says, ultimately, I do worry about the result of this just forcing a stealth election on Nashville, a very expensive stealth election on Nashville in order to give the city a poison pill. And it's not just about the property taxes, he says. It's all kinds of stuff on it that is, quite frankly, a poison pill for our city. Everyone who serves the city, every teacher, every police officer, every citizen in the city would need to be deeply concerned about this poison pill. We want to create a great city going forward into the 21st century and not create a backwater here and have us swallow unintentionally a poison pill, particularly through a stealth election. Now, the stealth election is very interesting language that he's using there.
Backwater. You're a backwater. You're a backwater, Cooper.
Seriously, man.
Hey,
Come
and you
on,
know,
man.
before that first paragraph you read, it said, I think a lot of people in the community will be talking about this.
Yeah, that's
and it's
right.
like, well,
yeah.
maybe you should have opened it up to the community to talk about it before you did this, and maybe this wouldn't have happened. Maybe if you hadn't rushed to get it done and let that one councilman who wanted to pause and say, let's figure it out. I can't remember
Glover.
Steve Glover. He was offering a less poisonous pill to people like us.
He was talking about unloading it off into a wheel tax. He was talking about decreasing the profit.
He was even talking about increasing it. He was even talking about increasing it still, like 15%. Like, let's meet in the middle. Let's be reasonable. Let's only do it for the perspective shortfall. Let's not just like, let's take all the money and hope everything works out. That's what Cooper was doing.
Well, and look, I mean city council had an opportunity to decrease this property tax just a few weeks back. And here's the story. If y'all don't know, some of the updates coming on in Nashville here, the first quarter sales tax revenue came in and it's looking like the proposed 34%. So that 34% was proposed to make up for what they thought was going to be a budget shortfall. Well, because of the increase in what they thought was going to be the lack of sales tax revenue, it looks like 20% out of that 34%, 20% out of that 34% could be made up just by the increase in sales tax revenue. So now we're really just talking about a 14% sales tax or property tax increase that would be needed to make up the deficit. Right now, they had a chance. By they, I mean city council had a chance to vote on this earlier, a couple weeks back, to take that 34% and cut it back down to 10, 12, 14, 18. And they said, no, we're not even going to consider it. Don't consider it. Now, here's the other thing where we're coming from, too. If we're just talking about the difference in a 14% markup here, we'll take that extra $100 million in additional spending. The Metro government is spending an additional increased $100 million from the last time around. So take that and cut that out entirely. Just maintain order for a little bit. And now we're really only talking about a 2 to 6% difference. And if it's 2 to 6%, somewhere in between there, people could they could easily stomach 2 to 6%, right? I mean, it's at least a conversation that everyone would be willing to have. Now, at Americans for Prosperity, we're going to say property tax in general, we just don't like at all, especially an increase for sure. But 2 to 6%, people could at least have a conversation about, especially if it's needed type thing, but 34% without even having to bring this up now. And Shine's exactly right. At the very beginning, it says, people are going to be talking about this. You can expect to be hearing conversation around the community. Here's it is. Cooper said at Thursday's press conference, he expected this topic, quote, will be actively discussed in the community. Shine's exactly right. Well, it would not be actively discussed now if you would open it up to active conversation prior to. But whatever, you call it an emergency budget. It is what it is. We're moving forward with the stuff now, right? The people's voice has been heard. Boom. Just wanted to give you all a shout out here. I think a lot of people that watch this program would appreciate it. If you're getting in the mayor's gullets, then something's going right. You know what I mean? Let's go to the national stories here now. RealNewsRadio.live, RealNewsRadio.live. And Sean, let me start by bringing up the Alice Johnson video, which I know people want us to jump directly to the Trump speech. We'll get to that. I have this little, I don't have it, The Sun cut up. The Sun's one of the only publications out there that cut up a few of the highlights from Trump's speech, at least in any decent format. But Sean, go ahead and pull up the Alice Johnson video. I think it's about 3 or 4 minutes, but it's worth listening to, at least most of it, because this very strange thing has happened now where in an objective way, an objective manner, the Republican Party is now the party that is able to promote the idea that they are actually trying to work towards criminal justice reform. And the Democrat Party doesn't really have a lot of stuff going for them that they can do that with. I'm talking the number of sentences that Trump has commuted, the number of people that they're working with. Goodness, I mean, Kim Kardashian of all people, the First Step Act. There's a lot of things that the Trump administration have done that it's been the Trump administration's goal to get accomplished. It hasn't been just something passed by the House that Trump signed off on. He's been very open and active about talking about this. And it was interesting that they sort of led with an Alice Johnson type thing. that sort of that really introduced where Trump is. So Law and Order at the same time looking into criminal justice reform. You can clearly see the strategy that the RNC is going for. But if we got that video ready, Sean, yeah, let's just go ahead and play that in its entirety.
Good evening. I'm Alice Marie Johnson. I was once told that the only way I would ever be reunited with my family would be as a corpse. But by the grace of God and the compassion of President Donald John Trump, I stand before you tonight, and I assure you, I'm not a ghost. I am alive, I am well, and most importantly, I am free. In 1996, I began serving time in prison, life plus 25 years. I had never been in trouble. I was a first-time nonviolent offender. What I did was wrong. I made decisions that I regret. Some say, you do the crime, you do the time. However, that time should be fair and just. We've all made mistakes. None of us want to be defined forever based on our worst decision. While in prison, I became a playwright, a mentor, a certified hospice volunteer, an ordained minister, and received the Special Olympics Event Coordinator of the Year award for my work with disabled women. Because the only thing worse than unjustly imprisoning my body is trying to imprison my mind. My transformation was described as extraordinary. Truth is, there are thousands of people just like me who deserve the opportunity to come home. Thanks to President Trump, but free in mind thanks to the Almighty God. I couldn't believe it. I always remembered that God knew my name, even in my darkest hour. But I never thought a president would. When I was released on June 6, 2018, I ran across that road and hugged my grandchildren for the first time. I'll never forget that feeling. And then I remembered the promise I had made to the men and women I left behind, that I would never stop fighting for them, and I haven't. I'm using my voice to tell their stories, and I pray that my face reminds you of those forgotten faces. 6 months after President Trump granted me a second chance, he signed the First Step Act into law. It was real justice reform, and it brought joy, hope, and freedom to thousands of well-deserving people. I hollered, hallelujah! My faith in justice and mercy was rewarded. Imagine getting to hug your loved ones again and to think this first step meant so much to so many. I can't wait because we're just getting started. The nearly 22 years I spent in prison were not wasted. God had a purpose and a plan for my life. I was not delayed or denied. I was destined for such a time as this. I pray that you will not just hear this message, but that you will be inspired by my story, and your compassion will lead you to take action for those who are forgotten. That's what our president, Donald Trump, did for me. And for that, I will be forever grateful. God bless you. God bless President Trump. And God bless America. Thank you.
Hey, give me a call at 615-807-0619, 615-807-0619. I'm interested to know what the real news community thinks about the Alice Johnson story, about First Step Act, about any of this stuff. And I say that in all sincerity because I followed that from the very beginning for a couple different reasons. One, because at Americans for Prosperity, we were working on our own criminal justice reform package in the state here.
just so everyone knows, we are always going to be working on getting rid of civil asset forfeiture in its entirety if we can. We believe that someone should be charged with a crime first before police officers can take their property. That's just us. That's one of the things we're working on here. We're also working on victim restitution issues to make sure the victims get their money first before the court system gets their money. We're working on a few voter rights issues. We're working on drug-free school zones, for example, in Tennessee prior to this session, which passed this session thanks to some great work by Representative Curcio and Americans for Prosperity. You know, in the state of Tennessee, it used to be that if you were, 1,000 feet within a school zone and you had any amount of drugs on you at all, it's a mandatory minimum 15-year sentence. Well, it was wrapping up people that had nothing to do with selling drugs to children. I mean, absolutely nothing. We would hear stories about people getting arrested with just pinky fingernail size amounts of cocaine on their person and being stuck in jail for 15 years. For 15 years. And then the kid was 22 years old. He's not a drug dealer selling to kids, man. He was just self-medicating, and he was 972 feet within a school zone. The law was not meant to be applied to him. So these were some of the things we were working on at the state level, and I was following criminal justice reform packages at the national level as well, in part because it was relevant to what we were doing at the state level. It helped pitch that idea to Republicans in the state because Trump was doing very similar things at the national level, making it make sense on crime, making it make sense again, making sense out of our criminal law. Punish the criminal, but rehabilitate the person type thing, right? People were getting wrapped up, lives were being destroyed. And so I do want to know, though, there has obviously been some national chatter push back and forth that this First Step Act isn't really all it's touted to be. I think it is, but I also think that because I know that President Obama tried to push the same thing, if not a very, very similar piece of legislation for almost all 8 years of his presidency. And however Trump spun this, whether it's through Kim Kardashian or otherwise, I don't necessarily care. The fact of the matter is that it happened and it's here, and we have great people like Allison Johnson to be able to tell her story. Alice Johnson, by the way, if you don't know what her full story is, she was hit when she was very young. I think she was 19, 20 years old or something like this, with a massive amount of cocaine on her person. I mean, it was a lot. And she said, obviously, she was wrong for what she was doing, but she was 19 years old, right? I may be slightly off in the numbers here, so don't quote me exactly. But because of previous convictions or something, she basically got what amounted to a life sentence. And I don't know if it was exactly a life sentence. It could be, but it amounted to a life sentence. She was basically going to be stuck in there for her entire life for a mistake that she made when she was 19 years old. So President Trump looked at the situation, and Kim Kardashian came to her, to President Trump, and said, look, this is a lady who has done fantastic things while she's been in prison. She just listed some of those right now, right? Some of the accomplishments she's had. Ordained minister. She became a playwright. She became a mentor to all the people in this prison. She was awarded some award for the work that she did with the Special Olympics as a coordinator for the Special Olympics. And Trump looked at that situation and said, look, man, you should not be paying a life sentence for a nonviolent crime. Yes, you did something wrong, clearly. But we obviously think not only have you paid your due at this point, but you're certainly rehabilitated and able to be paying back in as a member of society. Todd's a great story to tell right now. But I think because it's attached to Trump, Democrats want to, discount it somehow as if it's not a relevant story to tell. And it's not just Alice Johnson. You can look up Matthew Charles as well. I mean, there are several people that have stories to tell like this just in the Trump administration alone. And I feel like a lot of these things do not get the attention they deserve. And I'm not even trying to be an apologist for Trump here, an apologist in the sense that I'm advocating on behalf of his presidency, not like I'm apologizing for him. I'm not even trying to be an advocate for Trump. All I'm really trying to do is to say that the First Step Act, I believe, is a great piece of legislation that almost nobody knows. And certainly very few of Trump's supporters actually know. I know that because I talk to Trump supporters all the time, and I ask them, hey, here's a great little tool to have at your disposal when someone's talking about aspects of criminal justice reform, or when Joe Biden and Kamala Harris want to say, here's what the Democrat Party is about. You can say, well, here's a little bit of the Republican Party has actually done. I mean, I know people discredit Trump all the time for his character, and that's exactly what I've said since day one. And I do mean day one. One of the first things that Shine and I did on Real News when we didn't do this, there was a local news crew that wanted to come in and interview us. And at some point, I always said I was going to have to go back and eat these words. But one of the first things I said, it was like, what Shine, month 2 or 3 into this program? We had just moved to the morning slot. No, we were still in the evening slot at that point. I think
we were still in the evening slot, and it was someone from WATE.
Yeah, WATE came in, interviewed us, and I said at the time, I think the best thing that Trump could do is delete his personal Twitter account. Now, my intention for saying
Grant
that was because
saying that back before that was cool to say, like Grant thought that he was being like super reasonable,
super edgy, man.
Yeah, like no, like reasonable edgy is what he was trying to be.
Edgy.
Yeah, and we thought that would help us get on television. We got on television. I mean,
well, I still believe that now, but I did genuinely believe that back then too, that I thought the main knock that people could have against Trump was his character flaws. And that's been, for the past 4 years, that's been what the knock on Trump is. Very rarely, and not this happens often, right? But very rarely do people make a knock on Trump because of his policy issues. Now, if you dive deep enough, you can find policy issues. I have disagreements with Trump's policy issues all the time. He came out in his speech last night and said he's strong on the Second Amendment. False. Incorrect. He is not strong on the Second Amendment. He's very, very weak on the Second Amendment. He's actually done several things against the Second Amendment. Bomb stock bans, suppressor bans, red flag laws. Okay? 3. Boom, boom, boom. I'll be fair. I'll call balls and strikes. But most of the people that do not like Trump don't like him because of the things that he said, not the policies that have been passed. I mean, goodness, man, if we're going to talk about fiscal conservatism, then yeah, we might have a problem with $3 trillion being spent. And let's be real here too. Everyone realizes when the government spends $3 trillion, what they're essentially doing is issuing you a pay decrease, right? I mean, we all get that. I mean, that's one of the biggest problems I've been having with the crazy spending over the past couple of months here is as they're pumping in $3.7 trillion, I assume this is new dollars because they're not raising our taxes and they're not cutting spending. So if you're not raising taxes and you're not cutting spending, I assume where they're getting an extra $3 trillion is they're just printing it fiat money style. And when they do that, I assume it dilutes the value of every other dollar out there. Now, I don't pretend to understand the mathematics behind to what extent it dilutes the dollar. I just know the dollar that I have in my pocket now is not worth as much as it was, say, 7 months ago. And because of that, the money that I'm making every single year is not worth the exact same amount of money that it was 7 months ago. So what you basically did, American government, is give me and every other American citizen a pay decrease. That's kind of what happened. Now, I'm not going to blame that all on Trump. I mean, like, yeah, we had times going on, but I do. Okay, so I got a problem with fiscal conservatism, but then I look at so he said he wanted to cut 2 or 3 major bureaucratic regulations for everyone that's been passed. And I'm pretty sure the mark he's at now is 7. I think he's cut 7 bureaucratic regulations for every one new one that's been passed, which is a phenomenal accomplishment.
Well, and to be fair, too, COVID helped a lot with that because that's happened in every state, too. Like in every state, there were a whole bunch of regulations that are just not being applied right now. And then it became permanent because of, especially with Republican legislatures, like here in Tennessee, we got rid of the regulation that said you couldn't have telemedicine. And there's a whole bunch of stuff like that that's happened nationwide. I mean, there's all kinds of things like that going on.
By the way, Eric said on Facebook, she had no previous convictions, talking about Alice Johnson. She had no previous convictions. She said she was a first-time nonviolent offender. That's a great update to that story. Correction, rather. That's a great correction to that story. I think I'd said before, I think she had previous convictions. In my mind, that was the only thing that would have made sense to charge her with such a high crime.
No, it's because of Joe Biden's 94 crime bill. There were mandatory minimums if you had certain denominations of cocaine or crack cocaine. And you could be a first timer, which is why this was such a big deal. There were people who, like a 19-year-old trying to make a little extra money for mom and dad or whatever, or like maybe just grew up with the wrong crowd. You get that one mistake and you don't get a chance to come back.
Yeah, man.
Did you see how old she was when she was doing this thing here? She's a lot older than 19, a whole lot older. And it's like, and I know that like drugs are bad. Drugs are bad. Okay, they're bad. But like the people deserve to have their whole life go away when they didn't even hurt anybody.
No, an 18-year-old does not deserve to spend the rest of his life in jail for having even an absurd amount of cocaine on them, which this lady did have, I assume. But even an outrageous amount of cocaine on their person, no one deserves to spend their life in jail because of that. And look, importantly, back to the conversation we're having before about Trump's character, character as opposed to his policy, that type of stuff. Jonathan said, rightfully so. Jonathan said, I'm just going to throw this out there. His character equals gets results. I mean, that is almost undeniable. And I don't even know if Jonathan's making the point of it's good results or bad results, but results, he does get results from his character. His character is what pushes. I mean, look, Trump's character alone, I feel comfortable making this statement. Trump's character alone, in and of itself, is the sole factor that allowed him to walk into the Paris Climate Agreement and just say, nah, thanks, but no thanks, we're out. Nothing
Or the
but Trump's
TPP.
character. Or the TPP. Right? That is undeniably true. It is. Because no other president would have. I mean, every other president had an opportunity to do that. Well, at least.
Or
Obama got
made
us into
Europe
it, but-
pony up for $140 billion a year for NATO.
Right?
Or getting out of NAFTA. Who even thought that was something he could actually do? When he was like, I agreed with it. I was like, man, that was actually probably part of the reason I voted for him. And I'm not like advocating for voting for him. It's just you got to vote for somebody. And that was part of my reasoning was I loved the international trade deal stuff. But I didn't think he'd actually be able to do it. When he was talking about NATO not paying enough money, I thought it was good rhetoric, but I didn't think he'd actually be able to do anything about it. You know why?
A lot of the presidents.
Because a lot of American presidents have promised and talked and hemmed and hawed, and the only thing they're able to do, really, is start wars. That's like the only thing they're able to do, and sign executive orders.
Well, I think Jonathan's dead on right. And again, there are occasions where I've always said and I made this statement too, and I still stick to this statement. Coming out of law school and having this sort of sense that there's a certain amount of reverence or piety that's owed to the office due to the people that held it before and due to everything that the office itself, the office of the presidency, I mean, right, that there's a certain amount of reverence that's owed to the office of the presidency. And this is odd because unfortunately, I've now encamped myself with Nancy Pelosi because it's the same argument she's making as to why Joe Biden should not be in the debates. Now, let's jump to that story real quick, Sean, before we get back to Trump's speech. We'll jump back and forth between RNC and a few other things because it just makes sense to do this right now. So Nancy Pelosi, it's down here in the show notes where it says Pelosi signaling defeat, ? Pelosi signaling defeat? So Nancy Pelosi came out, Washington Examiner reports on this and says, we just don't think Joe Biden should debate. Come on, man. What do you want me to do with that? What do you want me to do with that, Nancy Pelosi? I mean, really, honestly, what am I supposed to do with that headline aside from just make fun of you and just call you out for how obtuse you were being about your scheming? You know that you don't know. I don't know. But we think, given logic and recent history, that Joe Biden will probably not perform very well. He won't be stellar. It's not going to be a shining example of his mental acumen.
His what?
Right? His mental acumen.
Yeah, I've seen that displayed so many times, you know.
Okay, right. Was it ever there? That's what you were saying? I didn't know he had it, right? Oh, God. Anyways.
Or that if he, not necessarily that he never had it, it's that he has any to display currently.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, well, currently, yeah. Oh, that's a fair critique. It is. Because
it's not like that it would put his mental acumen in a bad light. It's just that he may not have a whole lot of sharpness to cut the cheese, you know?
Yeah, man. And Biden used to be, I mean, let's be for real, man. Biden did used to be, in just recent history, man, Biden used to be one of the sharpest politicians out there. I mean, he was a formidable opponent, right? Man, I mean, if you watch some of a previous Biden speech, it's like he was on it. He would get it. That's part of the reason why they were able to pass that sentencing package the way that they did. They just pitched it so well. Back to the story at hand, though. Nancy Pelosi, you see the headline that you're looking at right now, coming out saying Pelosi, Biden should skip the presidential debates. Here's what she said. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi told reporters on Thursday that Democrat presidential nominee Joe Biden should avoid debating President Trump ahead of the November 3rd elections, saying, quote, I don't think there should be any debates. 3 presidential debates are scheduled, by the way, from September 29th and October 22nd. And Biden has committed to participating in all 3 of those, but a growing chorus of Democrats, so apparently it's not just Pelosi, but a growing chorus of Democrats have suggested that he should skip going head-to-head with Trump on the debate stage. Trump's past behavior and lies in office. Apparently that's what Pelosi's citing. And this is what I'm saying. That's why I have to admit a little bit. I don't know if this is an eating crow moment or not. I think my justifications and motivations, and I could probably articulate the reasons why I would say there's a sense of reverence owed to the office in a way that Pelosi could not justify. She says it's because of Trump's past behaviors and lies in office are the reason she believes Biden should walk away from the planned debates. Here's her quote saying, "I do not think the president of the United States has comported himself in the way that has any association with the truth. Evidence, data, and facts. I would legitimize," she said, "I would not legitimize a conversation with him nor a debate in terms of the presidency of the United States." Pelosi also cited Trump's, quote, "disgraceful behavior" during the 2016 debates. She accused Trump of stalking Democrat nominee Hillary Clinton on the debate stage. Remember, he was sort of shadowing Clinton on the debate stage, and said that Trump is bound to misbehave in rounds of debates with Biden. She said, quote, "So I think that he'll probably act in a way that is beneath the dignity of the presidency. He does that every day, but I think it will also be a little what the debates are supposed to be about. I don't think he should dignify that conversation with Donald Trump." Now, importantly, this story finalizes out by saying right after that statement was given, to the credit of the Biden campaign, let me tell you, the Biden campaign spokesperson, Andrew Bates, came out and said, no, hang on, hold on. Sorry, Pelosi may think he's not worthy, but we're not giving up yet. Don't you dare start that narrative, Nancy Pelosi, because you have just dug us a hole, man. You have dug us a hole. What are you doing?
Wait, I'm in charge here. I'll debate if I want. I kind of want to debate. I've been down in this basement for a long time. I mean, you don't know if I want to go somewhere else. I mean, all these people keep telling me, don't talk to cameras, don't talk to people, don't talk to Donald Trump. Well, I'm Joe Biden. I want to talk to somebody, you know?
You could just, I don't know. Is Nancy Pelosi running this? I don't know. So this
Nancy Pelosi believes she's going to be president in January. That's the problem right now is like, and she's getting all preemptive about it, trying to run her party, trying to run Joe Biden's campaign. She really thinks a lot of herself.
Let me make a statement though, Sean, that I can almost guarantee that nobody's going to agree with and nobody's going to like me saying. But in all sincerity, like, bro, Nancy Pelosi has pulled out something monumental these past couple of years to maintain any sense of order in that party. And I do mean that. And I know it sounds like I'm giving her credit, and possibly I might even be, but giving her credit for not allowing the full-on utter destruction of the Democrat Party. And it is starting to happen, but to be able to somehow maintain the fracturing splinters that Jonathan already put for laughing emojis in the Facebook, to maintain control of the fracturing splinters of the squad, Ilhan Omar and maybe it is Perez, Alexandria Cortez. Who's the other ones I'm forgetting, man? Ilhan Omar, whatever. You know the four that I'm talking about, right? By them just pushing, not even just democratic socialism, just straight up pure outright socialism. The Green New Deal, y'all, that is legitimate, unadulterated socialism bordering on communism. Don't tell me otherwise. A government controlling the entirety of the means of energy production in society is a legitimate socialist presentation of something. It just is. It just is. That was a Nancy Pelosi. That was an Alexandria Cortez thing. Nancy Pelosi's ability to somehow maintain this fringe over here that used to just be a fringe under Bernie Sanders. It used to just be one old kooky guy that was just spouting off nonsense, but it was always him. It was always Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is always going to be Bernie Sanders, and they knew how to deal with him. But Bernie Sanders could also get some millennials out to vote. So Bernie Sanders will figure out how to work across boards. The squad did not. The squad said, forget all that. The squad just went rogue and did their own thing. And I say that because of the inside stories that I've heard. So we meet, by we, I mean David, Sean Thompson, myself, and we meet with federal congressmen all the time. And one of these stories that I heard in federal congressmen, we were asking this guy about renewing or not renewing the Export-Import Bank. It has this sunshine provision that has to be renewed every so number of months or days or years, whatever it is. I don't know. We don't like the idea of the Export-Import Bank because it's the government picking and choosing winners as opposed to who comes in and who goes out. That's a totally different issue. But this guy told us, he said, and I don't want to, for sake of doing what we need to do, I don't want to disclose who this person was, but he's a federal congressman. He said, hey, look, this vote was coming up. All right. Maxine Waters had the ability in committee to put this to a vote as far as to whether we're going to renew it or not renew it. But because Alexandria Cortez, Rashida Tlaib, thank you, Richard, just tell me the other one, Rashida Tlaib, because Alexandria Cortez made such a stink about a single line in the renewal of the Export-Import Bank, Maxine Waters withheld that vote from the entire committee. Now, I'm not making this story up. It was not publicized at all. It is a real thing that happened. And what that says to me is that a freshman House member is able to control a committee head. Maxine Waters was the head of that committee. She was able to control her in a sense of not pushing a major piece of something to a vote in committee to get it to a floor vote because a single person wanted to do something about it. Now, that's why I'm making the point about, I'm all over the place this morning, but that's why I'm making the point about Nancy Pelosi saying whatever she's done to be able to control that sense of power. And Alexandria Cortez does have a sense of power. Believe me, I promise you she does. She's outraising the next closest fundraiser in the entire party by 2 times.
Well, and it's an impressive. Hold on, I know you want to get back to. I know we're jumping all over the place. We're kind of on a rabbit trail right now, but it's so good. I'm enjoying it anyway because I love talking about Congress. But with all you said you were kind of impressed with Nancy Pelosi, and it is impressive she's been able to hold the party together considering what's happened over the past 2 years. It's been like herding cats, but I don't think it's been the problems. She's had to put so many fingers in the dam, so to speak, like the Dutch boy, to keep the dam from exploding and losing control completely of the party. She's been so focused on putting out fires, another analogy, that the little things that cause chaos over time have crept, like Jeff Van Drew leaving the party. Or how many Democrat congressmen have spoke at the RNC this week? Yeah. Because of the squad. And because of what Nancy Pelosi has had to do to try to control the squad. Because in some ways, Nancy Pelosi trying to control the squad and direct them and keep some semblance that she's in charge has pushed away a lot of moderate Democrats, not just voters, but legislators.
Party members, right?
Party
members.
Legislative party, and I would even say on the state level, there are Democrats in state houses that are crossing the aisle with Republicans or just doing things that Democrats wouldn't normally do, like in our state. Representative DeBerry, I think what he's done has somewhat to do with Democrats in the state of Tennessee, but has more to do with the National Democratic Party. Way more. And how many Representative DeBerrys are there in other states? Yeah. How many Jeff Van Drews are in state houses switching parties because they're like, well, even if you joined the Democratic Party and ran for them in the early 90s or in the mid 90s or in the early 2000s, it just isn't your party anymore. And I don't know. I think that as amazing as it has been, the job she's done keeping power, she hasn't been able to do anything to grow the party, and it has been contracting despite her best efforts. I just wanted to throw all that context in there because we've gotten a lot of that good context during the RNC, hearing from Jeff Van Drew and hearing from that representative in Georgia and other people.
Yeah, that's 100% right, man. And Jonathan agreed with you on Facebook when you said how many other party members had left. He typed in several with an exclamation point, right? Eric types in Green New Deal comes from Agenda 21. Jessica just liked the stream. Thanks, Jessica. Appreciate you, man. Jessica's one of our folks out in Pennsylvania way. Just sticks with the community. It's awesome. We got a big community we're building here, y'all. So Joe Biden's team comes back and says, no, we're going to debate. Andrew Bates, his campaign spokesperson, in spite of what Pelosi said, and Andrew Bates said this: we certainly agree with Speaker Pelosi on her views that the president's behavior, but just as she has powerfully confronted that behavior in the Oval Office and the cabinet room, Joe Biden looks forward to doing the same on the debate stage. Now, I don't know, but I will say this much. If Joe Biden tries to play Trump's game, I don't know. We saw how that worked out for Hillary Clinton. Just don't play Trump's game. Like nobody's better at playing Trump's game than Trump is, because Trump set the rules for that game, and he's the only one that could possibly play. It's like trying to play against the referee. It's a terrible analogy. I don't know the best analogy. The point is, maybe it's like trying to play a video game against the game's coder. Maybe that's the best way. That's a much better analogy, actually. You're going to lose. That's the point I'm making. Either way you look at it, you're going to lose. And it seems like the only thing Democrats have left is just to pitch some promise to some nonsensical thing. I don't want to go into this too much here, but the next headline you'll see in the show notes here is of a Politico piece saying that Pelosi says Dems will release Trump's tax returns if they win the White House. Give me a pregnant pause here.
I thought Rachel Maddow already did that.
That's right, she did. Yeah, I forgot about that.
She did like a year ago. Right? I thought she did that already. I mean, it was like 45 minutes, and then we find out that Trump paid his taxes. I mean, I think that's how Brandon Strzok, the walk away guy, became a Republican as he watched that. If I remember right, Brandon Straka was watching Rachel Maddow because he's like, okay, maybe everything I've read about the Russia thing is true, even though it all feels like a lie, and maybe it'll all come together tonight when I see Trump's taxes. And then nothing. And then nothing.
Well, let me read this headline again. Sean, while I'm reading this headline, if you could bring up the under the RNC headlights and highlights under the national story section, Trump's RNC speech highlights. Pull that video up real quick because I want to go right to that and then finalize with something else here. But so Pelosi says, you saw the Politico headline as Sean's pulling up Trump's speech from last night. I want to read it one more time and then give a pregnant pause because I'm here's what I'm missing is Pelosi says Dems will release Trump's tax returns if they win the White House. I'll say it again. Pelosi says Dems will release Trump's tax returns if they win the White House. Let me ask you, Pelosi, who's going to care about Trump's tax returns if you guys win the White House? Nobody's going to care about that. Nobody's going to care if you all are in the executive branch. Nobody's going to care about the guy that you guys kicked out of the executive branch. And secondly, the whole pitch that Democrats have been making up until this point about the need for Trump's tax returns is for the sake of, I don't know, some type of proper disclosure or for the sake of somehow that the White House is playing proper games. It's not about releasing it to the public. They've been very clear. They've said multiple times they do not want to release this information to the public. They just want to make sure that the IRS laws are not being skirted, that the IRS is allowed to properly do its job. Go look this up for yourself. This has been their pitch. The Democrats' pitch on record multiple times has been, we're not trying to get at Trump's tax returns to release them to the public to influence an election or anything like that. No, that's asinine. All we're trying to do is make sure that the IRS can operate properly. And we just feel that Trump has done something possibly illegal or he's hiding some funds somewhere. And we just want to make sure that the law is being followed. It's just about their own internal information. So this now, Nancy Pelosi is not just pulling a 180. It's literally wearing hypocrisy on a sleeve type thing. But it's also, at that point, who would even care? Who would even care? Maybe Trump himself would care. I don't know, but he doesn't seem too concerned about it. Sean, if you got that video, go ahead and play Trump from last night. We'll play a couple minutes of this, and I want to finalize with one thing he says here in just a minute. But yeah, play that from the beginning. This is just some highlights from Trump last night.
Have voters faced a clearer choice between two parties, two visions, two philosophies, or two agendas? This election will decide whether we save the American dream or whether we allow a socialist agenda to demolish our cherished destiny. It will decide whether we rapidly create millions of high-paying jobs or whether we crush our industries and send millions of these jobs overseas, as has foolishly been done for many decades. Your vote will decide whether we protect law-abiding Americans or whether we give free rein to violent anarchists and agitators and criminals who threaten our citizens. And this election will decide whether we will defend the American way of life or whether we will allow a radical movement to completely dismantle and destroy it. That won't happen. At the Democrat National Convention, Joe Biden and his party repeatedly assailed America as a land of racial, economic, and social injustice. So tonight I ask you a simple question. How can the Democrat Party ask to lead our country when it spends so much time tearing down our country? Boom. They do not see America as the most free, just, and exceptional nation on earth. Instead, they see a wicked nation that must be punished for its sins. And we will also provide tax credits to bring jobs out of China back to America.
All right, you can stop right there,
Sean.
Sean.
Tariffs on any company.
I would suggest watching the rest of that. He switches into some tax policy stuff, and then towards the latter portion of he lays out it's sort of it was a very long speech, but
it was a long speech, but it's worth watching.
Yeah, it is. And that's just a few of the highlights. And towards the end, it grabs some of the COVID vaccine highlights and a few other things, right? But
I even liked Ivanka's speech. I think you should watch Ivanka's. I mean, mostly so you can watch Ivanka. She's smoking hot.
Anyways, so what I wanted to focus on is actually something that wasn't said. It's just something that was heard in the background. So you heard that stuff in the background. that sounded like sirens. It sounded like some emergency vehicle. That was protesters that were several. They were a long way down the street. At least they started a long way down the street. These protesters were outside. They were honking. They were doing their little bullhorns, whatever else they had. Sean, as I'm saying this too, if you could pull up, so it says, have Democrats embrace the violence or chaos, or it's just Trump's fear mongering. In there, it's the third thing down. It says that Rand Paul is surrounded by the mob. So if you want to pull that up, or if you want to pull up the CNN headline, that Fox News headline, CNN paying for on-air graphic, either one will help prove this point. But you heard Trump in there. What I wanted to focus on to end the program here today is that question that I just asked. You'll see it in the show notes. Quick plug. Anything that we talk about in this program is linked in the show notes in the description of wherever you're watching. Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, doesn't matter. That Evernote link goes. Gotcha. So actually, go ahead and undo the audio from that too, man. Let them hear the audio. Start that from the beginning, because this is Rand Paul as he exited the RNC last night.
Shay's stream and on my stream, go and tell him to refresh it on mine. It should be good.
All right, that's good. So first and foremost, Shay, I get it. You don't want people stealing your content, but buddy, the watermark, I mean, a little bit smaller, maybe something slightly less vibrant. I don't know what you got to do, but it's a little bit obnoxious. That's my only mark. It's my only note. It's my only note to Shay on that watermark. It's like that's the visual equivalent, Sean, of those DJs in the background with the DJ Khaled. You know what I mean? It's like, what did you do? I know you're not rapping. What are you doing right now? Did you make this beat? No. I'm just a producer in the background. DJ, boom, boom. That's the visual equivalent of just DJ such and such on their face. Anyways, so I asked this question and I put it in the show notes. Have Democrats embrace the violence / chaos? It's not always straight violence. It's maybe just pure chaos sometimes. Or is this just Trump's fear mongering? Because that's what you're seeing going on today. And I bring that up because of the first portion of the clip that we just heard from President Trump himself, talking about this idea of if Democrats take over, then blah, 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 to fill in the blank. He goes on to mention later on that the 10 cities with the highest crime rates and the most amount of destruction right now, and basically he's making we're meant to draw the inference of the most violent cities in the nation right now are all Democrat controlled, which is statistically accurate. And you can draw this down to the top 25 most cities, and I think 23 of them are all Democrat controlled. And so I asked the question, are Democrats embracing this violence or chaos, or is this just Trump's fear mongering? And you just saw, so as I'm asking this question, Shine says, well, you should just like run with the Rand Paul thing, because that's literally, as he's exiting from Trump saying these words, he's embraced by a mob-like crowd. Now, granted, nothing violent went on there. It does feel slightly chaotic in tone because we've seen how these things can so easily pop off before. And the frustrating thing here, Shine, if you could pull up this while I'm explaining this in the background, just above that Rand Paul clip is that Fox News clip. Open that up, or that Fox News article. Open that up and scroll about halfway down, and you'll see. I'm not exaggerating with what y'all are about to see. This is a real, an actual screenshot. I'm sure some of y'all have seen this. This is an actual screenshot of CNN's coverage the other night in Wisconsin. It says fiery, but mostly peaceful protests. Now, this is a very confusing sort of blurb for people to read. It would be a very, very confusing headline for
the image. The image is contradictory,
right? I mean, you don't have to be.
I'm having cognitive dissonance without even reading.
Right. I don't know what that coverage looks like. It's like, yeah, it's mostly peaceful, but these. I don't know, these roughnecks over here, somebody started firing a whole bunch of stuff. It's mostly peaceful, but there are some fires going on. They're roasting marshmallows at least. I don't know. And here's the thing, Sean. What I'm saying is, I think it's a confusing narrative that Democrats have pitched. If this would be really difficult for them to do, but if Democrats were to somehow pitch the narrative of, you know what, because you've heard this in the streets. You hear this all the time of the people that are at these marches. I hear this from some of my personal friends that are nowhere near the marches, that are not even affiliated with either organization doing this or party backing this. Here's the argument I hear is, if you're putting more stock in property value than lives, then the problem is you. You have the problem. They could just embrace the violence in its entirety. They could just say the violence is justified. They could go with this entire narrative of people not misquoting MLK, but taking him wildly out of context when he says that violent protests are the voice of the unheard, or something to that effect. I mean, they could do that because there are people that are doing that. The reason why there's so much violence and protests, whatever, because the people that are doing it feel justified in why they're doing it. So I ask the question one more time. Are Democrats, are they embracing this violence? I mean, they're certainly not condoning it. That much we know for sure. We absolutely know that.
Summer of love, Grant.
Summer of love. Hey, it's funny you bring up Summer of Love because
I do believe the vice presidential candidate for the Democratic Party in June said to Stephen Colbert that the rioters must not let up. So I believe that they have not only embraced it, they've encouraged it. I mean, the vice presidential candidate for their party said that they shouldn't let up in June. 3 months later, we have 35 dead. 35 dead, and I'd say probably close to billions of dollars in property damage and things like that.
You want to talk about some of the most... this isn't really poetic justice. I just find it absolutely hilarious. This level of trolling is... Shine, go to where it says Democrats course correction, too little, too late. See that Federalist headline? Just pull that Federalist headline up and throw it up behind us. So Joe Biden, during his acceptance speech for being the Democrat presidential nominee, just like Shine is saying, there's no Democrat that is condoning this level of violence. Now, that's not to say they're outright embracing it either. It's this weird sort of walk middle between that they're trying to do. And I know somebody's saying, well, what do you mean, Mr. Henry? Clearly they're embracing it by not condoning it. I agree with that logic. All I'm saying is nobody's outright at this point. Don Lemon has come out on CNN multiple times and said, this is a major blind spot. The violence, the destruction, the fires in the street, destroying small businesses that have nothing to do with police brutality is a major blind spot for the Democrat Party. What I'm making the point of is that nobody's outright embracing this violence as far as a political talking head. But Joe Biden, as he accepts the presidential nominee to be the nominee of the Democrat Party the other day, he doesn't say anything about the violence going on, but he does reference Charlottesville. At the very end of his speech, he referenced Charlottesville. And I don't know whether this is poetic justice or whether this is just the greatest troll of all time. But the guy who organized Charlottesville, a professional provocateur, this guy is definitional agent provocateur. Richard Spencer's the kind of guy that I would walk the opposite direction if I ever even saw him anywhere. Richard Spencer is not a guy to know about. He's barely a guy to talk about. He's a dude that exploits human beings on both sides. He's a bad human being, is what I'm saying. He's bad for our species, is what I'm saying. I'm making that statement right now. Here's the headline. White supremacist who organized Charlottesville race riots endorses Joe Biden now. It's the day after Joe Biden comes out, and maybe I shouldn't find this funny. I just do. The day Joe Biden comes out, and the only thing he says about violence going on in the streets is about Charlottesville, saying we never want another Charlottesville to happen again. The guy that organized the Charlottesville thing endorses him for president. Now, I don't know when they're going to ask Joe Biden to disavow this endorsement, but you'll scroll down later on. If you care to even understand the justification that this guy is trying to make, apparently in this perverse manner, in Richard Spencer's deluded mind, he says he's endorsing the Democrat Party because they support abortion more than the Republican Party. And in the words of Justice Thomas, abortion in America is kind of a genocidal project. This is not my words. This is
or Margaret Sanger, the person who invented Planned Parenthood. She also said that's paraphrasing a little bit, but she also said it was kind of a genocidal project. The person who invented Planned Parenthood.
And what they mean by that is, something like 37 to 38. It's anywhere between 34 to 38% of abortions, depending on the statistics that you look at. But anywhere between 34 and 38% of abortions are done by African American women.
Since it became legal, over 50 million African American children have left this earth.
And because African American women make up about 8% of the population? They say African Americans in general make up about 13 to 16% of the population, but you need to cut that in half because of women, right? Women are only half of that
Or
population.
slightly more than half, probably.
Yeah, right. Slightly more than half. So call it, I don't know, call it 9-10%. But 9 to 10% of the population is basically accounting for 34 to 38% of the abortions. This is the justification that professional provocateur white supremacist Richard Spencer is giving for backing Joe Biden. That's why I'm saying they're trying to be either the greatest troll of all time or just Richard Spencer being Richard Spencer. But this is the style of politics that's going right now. This is what Democrats are up against. And I use this to segue into the final piece for today as we're a little bit over time. But the thing I have to get to, the reason why I entitled this Democrats Course Correction Too Little Too Late, because they've been playing this weird middle ground for such a long time. They don't know the monster they've created and they don't know how to get it back in the cage. Sean, that first YouTube clip, if you could. Democrats course correction, too little, too late. We'll end the program with this. You just said a second ago, hey, summer of love, man. Summer of love. When we were talking a second ago about the violence going on, 35 people have died, by the way, in these riots. And don't anyone dare for a second think that when I say that statistic, don't anyone dare for a second think that, look, well, you're not focusing on the issues. You're not focusing on police brutality. What do you think I do for a living? If anybody's watching out there again, because I know
The issue is only 13 people, unarmed people, died at the hand of police last year. Only 13. 35 have died since May during the protests and riots. So, there's your comparison of the issue versus the issue we're talking about. That's the comparison in raw numbers.
And it's just like, I've seen, we would see some YouTube comments from time to time, people that come across the hashtag related things and just watch this back later on, the keyboard words or whatever. And it's just for those people, those are the people I'm talking to. I know the people that watch this normally, but for those people, I don't have time to go through everything that Shannon and I are doing right now, but we've devoted the entirety of our adult lives to fix the criminal justice system. That is what we do. That is our priority, supreme number one. That's what we're about. We've been about this for several years. Don't come at me talking like we don't know where. Before this was a thing, before this was topic du jour, before it was trendy to do, before there was even a single hashtag about it, Sean and I were out there trying to fix it, okay? So don't come at me with that. But here's the headline. Mayor Jenny Durkan, she's vetoed the council vote in Seattle to cut 100 Seattle police officers. Dude, I'm telling you, now the Democrats have a major problem. They're trying to course correct now. But my question is it too little too late? So Trump is either fear-mongering about, I don't know, something going on with Democrats, either the violence or the chaos, or whether it's fear-mongering or not, it doesn't matter. Democrats have been placed in a situation where they either have to fully embrace the violence and figure out what to do with this monster they've created, or back off from it and figure out how to get that monster back in the cage. Play this clip real quick, Sean.
Mayor Durkan said the reason for the veto was due to a lack of planning on the council's part for what will happen to public safety with the budget slash to the Seattle Police Department. Part of the city council's reworked budget, 100 officers would be laid off and certain programs, including the navigation team, which works with the homeless population, would be affected. Durkan says she's working with the council, SPD Chief Carmen Best, and soon-to-be interim chief Adrian Diaz to come up with solutions. Durkan and Diaz both spoke about the increase in gun violence in Seattle.
We must stop gun violence. We know that enforcement and policing is only one part of the work that needs to be done to do so. We also have to work with trusted community partners who can work both to de-escalate situations and provide alternatives to the criminal justice system.
Since June 1st, shots fired calls have increased by 55%. Diaz hopes community-based programs will be the answer.
But clearly, we need to do more. We will collaborate with community organizations to ensure that those who are most at risk to experiencing violence are connected to services.
During Carmen Best's last time addressing the city as police chief, she said she hopes Diaz is given the shot he deserves to lead the department.
I am absolutely confident. I'm actually thrilled to see you take on this leadership role. You've been amazing for so many years, working so hard in the trenches every single day. Support him.
All right.
Support each other. Let's make sure.
Sorry, I mean, she just goes on. That's basically most of the clip. But obviously everyone knows what Mayor Durkan's doing here. She's trying to save her own fill in your blank. She's just trying to save her own job. She's trying to save her own hide. This is purely a political stunt to try and make sure she doesn't get voted out of office again. Now, again, that's why I'm asking the question: is it too little, too late?
So since June 1st, shootings increased by 55%. When in June, this woman said on national television, "We'll have a summer of love."
Summer of love.
No,
man.
you had a summer of shootings. Shots fired calls increased by 55%. You personally made your city less safe, and you can't unring a bell. That's the problem. You can't put sound back in a bell once you ring it. You have rung the bell, and its reverberations are all over the United States, and you can't just put that back. Sorry, Summer of Love, Durkin.
It's not just Seattle. I mean, obviously it's Portland. What are we, day 80 something now with the protests going on?
We got to be close to like 95 actually. That was 2 weeks ago. We'll be at day 100 soon.
I mean, look what's going on in Chicago. Obviously, Mayor Lightfoot out there saying, "Well, hey, hang on. You guys need to patrol these streets and make sure it's not getting too, I'm for protest in the street, and if it gets violent, then we'll figure out how to write that off or something like that. But as far as my house is concerned, you can't come on my street." The story there is that Mayor Lightfoot took a bunch of police officers from Chicago PD and lined her streets with it because she has a right for her home to be protected. Meanwhile, out in St. Louis, if you try and protect your own home as opposed with a firearm, you could be prosecuted for that. You know what I'm saying? You see the disconnect here that people are having? And apparently the city council is so progressive. They are so progressive in the city council in Seattle that this is why I think everything is circular. I'm not necessarily sure if we have a linear approach to politics anymore, because they're so progressive in city council that they've kind of looped all the way back around to squeezing out a female African-American police chief. We're going to fight for minorities, except that one over there. We want
to give minorities a voice and put them in places of power. And then kick them out.
And then kick them out of power. Right? Well, unless they were there before we got to them, well, then those people need to leave. We want to put them in power and then kick them out of power. That's right. Oh,
just to show them.
Just to show them. But Sharon and I tried to tell everyone too from the very beginning of some of this ideology being pushed that it was not about actually protecting minorities. It wasn't. It had nothing to do with protecting minorities.
No, they're a bunch of racists who use people they don't like to gain power. And that's the real truth of it. That's why I made that joke about we want to give minorities a voice, put them in positions of power, and then kick them out.
Right.
And I'm not kidding around. Like, I really believe they do that to show us and them, to show people who aren't people of color and show the people who are advocating for people of color that they have no power. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I really believe that that's what it's about. It's not about uplifting minority voices. It's about uplifting them so they can cut them down. And I know that's a little bit of a stretch because I'm not talking about BLM specifically. What I'm talking about is this woketopia. Those people. They really like to tear down people of color, specifically who are not towing the line, more than they seem to like to tear down white people. They really don't like people of color. And that's why I think that the woketopia stuff seems so cognitively dissident, where you can constantly point out hypocrisy.
Mm-hmm.
It's that white knight type racism where you think where one would think, because of the color of their skin, regardless of what it may be, that you're better, stronger, faster, whatever, and that everyone else needs help. It's the racism of low expectations, which I believe in a person full of anger and vitriol can become actual nasty, the kind of racism that you would recognize. And I believe that has happened to a lot of people in the woketopia side of things, and that you pointing out that police chief deal, it was funny at first, and I love making jokes and whatever, but it's a serious thing to look at when you think about where some of the worst stuff has happened, and what these people advocate for, and how there's tension there, and how it doesn't seem to make any sense. And the only thing that makes it make sense is that racism of low expectations, which I believe, for people who have things bad happen to them, or even just dwelling in that psychosis, it can become like regular old bigotry and racism, which I believe is what has happened in Seattle with that police chief.
I mean, obviously, if people don't know, when we were joking about the Seattle police, that Seattle police chief that you just heard speaking, that was her, in essence, passing the baton to the next one, the African-American female. That was her passing the baton because she became so frustrated with the way the council member was making decisions of cutting her funding, not allowing her to actually pursue law enforcement while people were being literally shot in the streets. People were being shot in the streets. She couldn't get her people in there. She couldn't get her officers in there. She couldn't get emergency, ambulance in there or anything. She could not even effectively do her job. She became so frustrated by the situation the city council had created. She voluntarily left, or so she said. She was squeezed out, man. She was squeezed out. Seattle has become so progressive. They squeeze out African-American females from police chief positions. I don't even know where to go with this, honestly. I mean, I think that's where we end the program at this point, is just asking, as the Democrats are now obviously course correcting, as Mayor Jenny Durkan is coming out and saying, I realize, I get it, the city council said they want to cut 100 police officers, but y'all are nuts. Like, we just can't do that. I can shift some stuff around, or I can have a conversation, but just outright excising 100 different police officers right now, y'all are seeing the same stats we are. I mean, what are you arguing for? Pure anarchy? And some of the city council members are saying, yeah, that's exactly what we're arguing for. That's exactly what we're arguing for. Now, I would make a distinction. Don't think that this is the philosophy of ANCAP. These people are straight up communists. And I'm not making this up. One city council member in particular is a self-avowed communist. Her words, again, an anarcho-communist, but whatever. She says socialist Democrat. I don't care what she says. Doesn't matter. Mayor Jenny Durkan's walking this all back, saying, I'm not going to fire these police officers, but I do believe it's too little too late. The election is right around the corner. I just want to know how this whole thing is made up. So, recapping the show today. Convention went over that. You guys are making some moves out here in Tennessee. You got Mayor John Cooper saying the city's going to take a poison pill. Democrats, course correction, too little too late. And I don't know. We'll vote Joe Biden actually debate. What's the over-under on y'all? Y'all think Joe Biden's actually going to debate? I'm pretty sure he will, but it'd be interesting to see. We got to sign off for today. We love y'all, for real. We'll be back on Monday doing it big. Mr. Henry, David Sean Thompson, we're out.